Mm. So, I was trying to figure out like what exactly I was gonna do. Like, should I do like a kind of reaction video? Should I? And then I kind of well, let me just. I just kind of. I was really excited. And this is one of those things that just been floating around on the surface. So I just kind of looked at. Um, and I wanted to just kind of. I know I wanted to talk about it in some kind of form. And I mentioned this show in a different record, so I guess I don't really know. I'm just gonna do the turbo thing, just kind of go into it. So we got Cam Girlfriend, which is a part of the Camming Life, I guess, channel, and Camming Life itself is sort of it's a channel that really just goes into the kind of I guess I'll say the lifestyle of people that are in that I guess in that trade and that whether it's like a I guess for many of them it's just like a career. I'm kind of skatering on it because when we're talking about it's really difficult. I guess in my mind, I don't want to just something about something being just a career or just this and just that. I try not to. I try to be as open with my language as possible because I want to be accurate as possible. And when it comes to people who are, whether you want to call it the adult industry or people who are just having a hobby, I don't want to put people in a box. I don't want to say that this is people. I'll say people who are associated or go into it who are active, who are into camming. I guess active in it. I don't know. Call it just in camming. People who are involved in camming, and this channel is basically dedicated to that. Whether they're doing his career or it's almost like a documentary kind of style of things going. I didn't really look too much into the channel because but mostly just want to focus on the show. But this is both just kind of a shout out to that particular channel, but also like this is something that the show even one represents. The show itself, Cam Girlfriend, I would say if there's a word that describes it, it's aspirational. It's vision, but it's aspirational vision. This is a lived-in world. This is a world in which you imagine that this is someone's life. You have a community. I mean, well, let's go ahead and, so this is about a girlfriend, a couple in which the girlfriend happens to be a cam girl. But this is really a story about two of them. And what I mean when I say aspirational and I say vision is that in saying things like this is a lived-in world, is that this is reflective of this is just really in the end, this is just a show about a couple. This is akin to something like maybe Will and Grace. I think this is about a couple. I'm throwing words out. There's when I think about the show, there's things that come to mind. I think about like certain shows, like maybe HBO's Girls. Those shows you see like on HBO or or even like primetime kind of shows where you just have it's usually just the setup is that you have a couple and the couple kind of go in these crazy shenanigans. It just so happens that this is about a cam model. So that's where I mean aspirational vision. But also, this is something that you imagine people, whether with the couple itself, but like the friends around them. That this is you're sitting there going like, one, this would be a world that this is something that was very very normal. Also, there are people who are in this in this fuck. What am I going to say? In this act, who are active in this. I just don't want to put them in the box. That's why I don't know what that means to them. Like to this individual, camming could mean this is a hobby. And again, taken into the risk and all. I guess I mean this is what they do, so I don't know. But in terms of associating with the common clay, the normal society, so this is difficult. There's so much I want to say, but it's like I want to be able to put in the way that I'm going into this in a very broad sense, in a very broad spectrum, because I don't want to. I want to stay away from sharp edges. I really want to be accurate with my language. I want to be open. I want them. I want to almost say this is something that someone does, and what that is, that really depends on them. This is why I mean my aspirational. This is something where someone should be able to do, and that should mean that can mean a lot of things to them. And I think with this particular show, this is just happens to be a show in which, in terms of camming existence, that for at least for this this lady, this girlfriend, who is called Chloe, and her boyfriend Mike. The girls played Lily LeBeau, I think Lily LeBeau. I think I call it Lily LeBeau because Beauty was in it, so I just call it LeBeau, but it's Lily LeBeau, and then Mike. I'm gonna get the guy's name. It's like Keystone something. Dave Keystone. And I know that they've gone through a long process with the show, and eons, and there's just a lot of writing, and you get a sense that like they're like collecting the show. They sort of throughout processes just kind of put this thing together. Maybe didn't really have a sense of any sort of wins or anything like that, and then they finally completed it, and then thus they can process it through YouTube, where I've seen it. I saw the show on YouTube. I watched the show on YouTube. I think collectively it's like 9 episodes, and each of them is just like a scenario of the day in life that happens to involve camming. And in this way, it's treated as a career, as a business. This is a main line of their income. So much, very much in that this is a lived-in society that we also have, much like if you've ever watched the HBO Real Sex, that they would have these. It's a documentary, but they would have. They would have. What's the word? I'm not going to say interview, not so much. Well, in the show, yes, but what's a good word? Maybe confessionals, open space where people can talk about their experiences in this, particularly in this show. So, like before each episode, and going to every episode would begin with someone in that life, in those activities, talk about particulars in their experiences, and then the episode would proceed, and that would be what the episode is about. It's something that was highlighted in those experiences. Much like in HBO, where people would basically go into the documentary, would also have these little slices of confessions from people on the street, and they would just talk about their experiences that were related to whatever subject we're going into. Also, I got a sense that some of the questions were probably related. I imagine some of them weren't necessarily. They were kind of random. This show, I think they're mostly related, but I think there might have been one or two that were kind of more random and things that are interesting in terms of this particular this activity. But you got these two, and this mostly, it's whether we're talking about anything. We got 9 episodes they went through, and you get a sense that this is very much, it's highly contextual, and I don't mean in terms of the camming life, but it's in that the relatability comes from the fact that you've got something going on in your life, right? As far as in terms of income and where that's coming from, and this is very much set. This is something that reigns, I suppose, very true in that world is the aspect of customer service, and so much of the show is in that in respects to customer service, and that Chloe. she has a particular style, and her boyfriend Mike. The, the fact that what she does, they're both kind of involved in this thing, obviously. Well, in this particular way, it's a huge part of their relationship because of incomes. It just happens to relate, and that it's very normal with them. Which again, it's often very normal. One of the things I love about shows like this is that you can take something that seems very and then as it's not something that you would necessarily. It's weird because it is become very very normal. It's very rare to see something like this. This is why again this is where I really have to emphasize the whole aspirational and the vision. The vision part is that we can have a show. So much of the show is, I feel like this is a show that was. I can see a lot of the show in the way of like. I really hope that a lot of film producers get a Ganter of this. That they would be able to see this sort of thing, because there is a market in here. Not only that, but it is not a coincidence. So Lily LeBeau, who is actually happens to also be a sex, I guess. I want to be very broad. I don't know what this means to her, but she's in the adult industry, in the general sense, as an actress, as an actor, as a performer, and there is this kind of. I don't know. This show is doing that. This is what happens when you show members of the common clay something like this. Is one of the things that I know is that it's like, well, of course, I've said this before. There's a lot of people who are in the industry who can act very well because, of course, acting is one of those things that I think everyone really could do. I think people there. It's there's something about. I can use short-term language and go like, I don't want to say shit like talent. Just she's very talented. I don't like using short-term language like that because when it comes to the whole idea of talent and acting, I don't know. There's something weird about calling acting, or really any sort of talent. It's like I don't know. I think some people are natural. Maybe we'll say that she seems to be a natural at acting, and that she would be considered a really good actor, meaning that she performed very well. Whatever kind of acting we're doing here, in that this is supposed to be lived in, realistic. So this is what she does. She's really really good, and I think that's not by mistake. I think in terms again really emphasizing aspirational vision. That not only can you, we're saying to producers, I love the idea that the show is kind of saying to those film producers that, look, hey, you can have a show about the sex industry, about sex work, or artistry, or hobbyists who are also just happen to be in it. That's a lot like other shows that you might see on HBO, that you might see on regular television about couples who just have their life, whether it's a business thing or they both share a business. This seems to be something that you're watching the show and you're like, this is very familiar. I've seen this before, even if you haven't personally seen it. This seems very familiar. It just so happens to be about the sex industry, or this has to be someone who is in that trade or in that whatever you want to call it for them, that activity. But this is yet very lived in. And this is very common with shows that happens to be about people that you otherwise would call abnormal. It's interestingly humans. There's a lot. We all seem to want the same thing, and that this is no different here. They're both people who are basically just in the business together, and it just happens to be in the sex industry. And the show isn't really too much. It's about that thing, but also it's about how normal that can be. If we take it that way, it doesn't have to be this. We don't have to be seen as freaks. We can be normal folks because we already are. This is what I mean. As lived in, it's like no. When I watch a show, I'm pretty damn sure this is someone's life. Someone is having these experiences for sure, and the shenanigans, everything. Like this is what helps with the documentary style in the beginning of the show, really showing that, look, no, people have this life, and it's very normal, and everyone can see it as normal. It's just not out yet. And again, it's something as basic and as primal as sex. Something like this should be the first thing. If we just discovered art, sexual depiction would be the first thing that would ever be produced. In fact, it kind of was. There's no doubt that sexual depiction was one of the first things that people drew. It's so primal. It's so animal. Absolutely. So that's whatever, of course. But in the status of the world, and that these people, and again, like, you look at things like OnlyFans, at least as far as on record, me speaking in this space and me putting this on record, kind of shunning out sex from their, or at least a huge aspect of that from their platform. And so you got that going on as I'm recording this. And I think something like Hamlet kind of proves that, like, and I've said this about the OnlyFans, one of the things that really worked about it is that this proved that you can coexist, that those things will have to be, even though that was a huge part of what it was. And yes, one of the most annoying, maybe not annoying, but it's like, one of the things that's interesting is that I've heard so many people talk about the OnlyFans, including myself. And I would rather hear more from the people in the industry. I've heard mostly people who know of the site, don't really know much about the sex industry that much, and although they want to do the right thing, I can still hear ring true of a lot of, it's like, oh yeah, now you guys gotta go get a real job. I've heard of so much of these sort of takes, and I don't know. I know that people want to feel smart, and they want to, feel like they're kind of, they want to be real, right? I don't know. So some of the short-term language can be real. Like, I get that it's quick to get there, and we all kind of understand this kind of language and stuff. But when we're really, I don't know. It's just because people go into this and they only know what they think they know, and although they, even in their talking about it, they understand that there's more to it. But it shows like this just show, like, look, these people are just, they're out here just like you, man. They're just hustling, trying to make ends meet. That's all they're really doing. Just because sex is involved, I don't know. There's something incredibly weird about people taking sex and making it into something it's not. It's sex. It's so ironic. I don't know. The most ironic thing in the world. So, things like the crusade did not help. But anyway, let's get back to the show. So, one of the things I love about the show is it's so multi-service. There's so much layers to the show in itself, and that this could be a show that you can show the producers that, look, we can have a show like this that happens to be about the sex industry, and we can leave out a lot of those cliches because we can just focus on what's actually going on. And those things can be, because like I'm watching the show and it's like, wow, also it's showing us producers, and not only do we have a show which is very recognizable in a lot of kind of shows you see on active television and streaming, but you got Lily Boo right here who can act her fucking ass off. Someone who just happens to be an adult actress, and she's out here, I'll say, absolutely killing it with the acting. The performance here was absolutely wonderful, and it's not like it's like a good performance for an adult actress either. No, this is very much this. If there was any show you would go in there and very like zero in on that stuff, I think some people would look at this like, oh wow, she's not only is she an adult actress, but she's actually one of the more recognizable people in the adult industry. Much like a Sasha Grey, and very prominent in when she was very, very active. Once Nat Space, if we're not gonna, if time is an illusion, we're gonna try to use space instead of using something like, time kind of language. I try to be personally like more specific with my language. Anyway, one, because I'm not really sure if she's still active, and she's and the life. Well, in the streaming channels, being inactive or active doesn't make you or not make you on top of things. You can still be riding high in spite of you not being active, and canonically not being active from and then there's a number. Just like Sasha Grey. Sasha Grey hasn't performed, and she's still one of the top people on those kind of sites. So that's why I mean where I don't really want to take that because I want to be accurate. You don't have to be you don't have to be active in these things to be considered still primary. That's why I really want to emphasize. And taking that into account, considering that not only is she considered still prominent, and I don't necessarily think she's as active, if active at all. She might actually be pretty active. But it shows that not only can you use to those producers, not only can you use this sort of show that's very familiar, but also just happens to normalize the sex industry, but you can use these people who are adult actors to portray in these roles. You don't have to give it to what you would people who don't do it, but you can. These people can be in these roles and kick ass. So that's a really good thing. This is what I mean. Really emphasizing the aspirational vision. I'm not sure if the dude Mike, the person who played Mike, Keystone. What's his name? Is it Dave Keystone? I remember his last name. I don't know if he's in. That's not really the point, though. The point is that, well, I guess that would further emphasize the point. What I mean, but with Lily LeBee would kind of, you get what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. The show, I think, the package of the show, that is something that's familiar, but also the hook is that this happens to be. And there's some pretty interesting scenarios that one wouldn't think about in terms of the customer service. The customer service angle of the show is something that I think really kind of, it says a lot of, this is interesting because we have this YouTube culture with a lot of reaction channels and analysis channels in which someone speaks in front of a camera and just kind of talks about subjects, established subjects mostly. You got the customer service aspect of it all. Their income comes from people who value this stuff. And what's interesting is the sort of the parasocial aspects of being a customer in the industry. There's so many people who have this idea that there is no that you know, because there's these free sites and such that people don't pay for. I don't know why people think that. It's so weird. Why do you think those things are on those sites in the first place? What do you think those are made of? Yes, they're pirated stuff, but there's a lot of people who created a lot of things on there. And I don't know. I feel like there's something that people. I don't know why people. There is the truth in that a lot of people don't buy stuff, but there's a lot of people who do buy into a lot of stuff because there's a lot of services out there, much like camming life. And it's interesting because the show, this is one of the things I find is interesting about the show. There's aspects about it in that, much like a lot of people in the, what's a good word? We'll say pro-entertainment. I've used that word before. We'll say pro-entertainment. And I mean it as a broad spectrum. That have agents, that have, and there's a lot of conversations about, will we have third parties that are used to kind of manage the comment sections and the general interactions between the performers and the customers. The keeping a sort of the culture that you create within those worlds, and the kind of things that you'll share with your customers that you may not share with your boyfriend because of circumstantial things. I mean, being in a parasocial relationship offers a sort of different kind of relationship in which there are some details you might know about this performer that you could imagine their family members may not know because of the subject itself. Because we were talking about sex, it makes sense that they would have a different and more, maybe in some way, a more deeper relationship in some aspects. Because when you have boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, you have significant others, this is a relationship in which you want to sanction a good footing as you go in this relationship, as it's being active. You want to make sure that they're in good keepings with you. You also have this, a kind of mental shrine of what that relationship is. Everyone has this idea. What I mean is that you have ideas about your relationship. This is what I mean, that everyone has their own kind of mind, right? And no matter how much you think it, I mean, the whole thing that we're in love and stuff, you'll always have different ideas about each other. You'll talk shit about your boyfriend behind. You'll talk shit about your girlfriend behind, because that often happens. You know, you always talk about, oh, mama, he's getting on my motherfucking nerves, I swear to God. You know what I mean? Right? And in parasocial relationship, they really touch on this, that, hell, even stand-up comedians have an interesting relationship with their audience than they ever will do with their significant others, because in those relationships, you're protecting, but you're also, you have to live with it, man. You don't want to you want to have a good standing with your relationship. You don't want to be super honest. Although that would be nice if people were. Not because if people believe that they should be honest. Honestly, just accept that everybody. If we're going house, everybody lies. And honestly, just kind of embrace it. And there's a lot of this show that touches on it. And again, really, the hook of it being about camming life is only, it's subtext. It's reflective in that how ridiculous the society is toward this line of work or activity or hobby. Because it can be, and it has been and is all of those things. Hell, we all have sex, homie. This is really just about how we shouldn't have to hide away or shy away from that kind of stuff. And that's one of the great aspects about the show. It really hits a lot of these crazy, like I'm watching the show and I'm like, Jesus, this is so good about how they're really, and again, I've said this, I'm saying this, that the show it wasn't a quick stay production. This is a production in which a lot of thought went behind these episodes. As confessed by Lily LeBeau, she's talked about how like this show was not an easy fix. This was something that took a lot of writing and thought went in behind this, and with each episode, it's like getting into things that you've definitely had with your significant other, even with yourself, man. I really like how lived in this show is. This is a really, really good put together show. I also like how it's not, I would say a quick sit, meaning that the episodes are paced and they're sectioned in a way where, in terms of, I don't really want to talk about, I don't know, some people, I know that when people put together shows, how long a show is goes to account, although I don't know that's necessarily true. I know it's true in terms of the way a pacing goes. I know that they have a ballpark in what's going to be, but I do want to talk about how quick and steady this show is. It gets to these points pretty quickly, and it lands. I mean, each of these episodes need to kind of land, and each of them kind of do. That's what I love about the show. It's getting the point across. This is why I mean this is a good show to kind of package these shows to producers. A lot of producers can sit and get through these episodes. This show feels like one of those shows you might produce in hopes that more people will see this kind of shit and thus a bigger show will happen. This is like an extended pilot. That's what it feels like. Pilot comes to mind. This is, again, Aspirational Vision. It feels like an extended pilot of something. A pilot, of course, being a test run episode, but this is like a test kind of shows that can come out of this. I can see television, movies being made in this subject. And of course, there are movies, there are television shows that already kind of, well, not too many. Certainly not enough where something like this would be necessary, but something like this would be necessary if you want to get people to get on board with this. It's interesting because I don't know if a lot of people ever really talk about the show. I know this show, I think, has awards within their circles, and of course, I think maybe TIFF is indie sort of shows. I think definitely looked at things like this, but I really wish something like this would hit the mainstream because this is put together very, very well. And you get through it, and it's like, wow, that's really cool. I really hope. I left the show going, man. I really either one would love a second season of this with the production behind this. I know. I think Charabate mostly produced this. I think they're the finance behind it, which makes sense. They're going to be the ones who would be interested in stuff like that. And I think Charabate. I was going to say crap like this, but no. That's military talk. That's anyway. You know what I mean, if you know what I mean. But Charabate, they're mostly because I know that they put together. I think they're the ones who are like behind a lot of these AVN shows and stuff like that. So they definitely have some backing. And I would love it, man. Now I'm thinking about it, something like Charabate. Man, I would love it if they put together a featured movie. I'm sure maybe they have before, but I would love it if they put together a featured movie. Some of these producers that are behind these shows, I mean, Charabate. And I think this is who wrote this movie. I feel like because I was going through the production, I think they listed Lily LeBeau. I know she was a huge writer in this, and I know they have like a list of writers like who wrote this episode of this. So they got some writers on. They got some people who have experience behind the show. I'm kind of wondering, man. Some of these production sites, man, should definitely look into doing more of this sort of thing. It's just that so much of the stuff is going to be attached to the adult industry, and the adult industry is kind of in the wave right now in terms of the common clay. Well, not really. It's in the waves in terms of the common clay are the common clay, meaning the Stone Society. They're not the pinpoints. The pinpoints are the ones, the big heads, the people who are passing the money around, who are passing production, people who are ahead of the production. And those people are just filled with other people who are also part of the common clay. It all comes down to some of these infrastructures changing the way they think, giving some of these people a chance, and thus the common clay could experience what they already know. People like me. I'm watching the show and I'm like, yeah, of course. The common clay would be open to this stuff if you just let them be open to this stuff. People, we live in a Hufflepuff society. Okay, no. We live in a Slytherin society filled with Hufflepuffs. Meaning we live in a very, very capitalist society filled with people who are mostly going to be in the middle of things because they just want to get by. They're malleable to a lot of this sort of thing if you give them a chance to be into this sort of thing. Put this stuff out there, please. Things like this is why, we wouldn't have shit like the OnlyFans thinking that. And again, it's really the banks. It's not like they want to cut out most of the money. I mean, a lot of people are shitting on OnlyFans. I'm like, look. They would. I don't know. They would want to. A lot. Then again, there's some confusion because a lot of people are saying that it's like OnlyFans that are the ones who are cutting that shit out themselves. That they're shooting their own goddamn foot. Again, in the recording, in the space of recording this thing. I don't know. Things change because people change. We live in a set foundation in which the parts are going to move, and money moves. So I imagine some details will come out or continue to come out, but use that in at least in a historical way. Since this is going to be out here, maybe I don't know, as a kind of as long as this stuff is out here, that this is a capsule, a space capsule, a set capsule. You look at it and go, yeah, that's right. The OnlyFans used to be a hosting site for the adult industry, or for the not the industry. Well, sure, it was an adult infrastructure. It was in itself an adult industry, capstone or aspect or place of the. They set it off with the adult stuff, and they were used to be a thing or. Man, remember when they decided to do that? Wow, that was dumb, right? Whatever we're at. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is this kind of show, it just proves what we all kind of assumed that, yes, we get very comfortable in these cliches about these foundations, and those foundations are short-term, in order to kind of do away or have an idea of what is made of when we look at the adult industry. But we all know these are humans, and plenty of them can probably act, and plenty of them can have lives that we all kind of understand. Again, what I mean lived in is that, like, we know camming people are out there. Hell, this is also in a documentary, and hell, the whole channel is dedicated to it being a documentary style and showing their life. And that in those lives, they have friends and people around them that know what they do. And that they are all accepting of that stuff. And that we all can join in and be accepting too. I'm John Turbo Black Closet Media, and thank you.